Hey, there we go. So unfortunately for us, Fred had to take a different meeting, trying to get out of this. So joining us this month is Tracy Todd, who I'm sure you are all very familiar with. She hosts her own, you host office hours, I believe.
I do. We're now calling it working lunch. So LAPs and anybody else can work on their business and in their business. So we answer all types of marketing questions and Lean Law product questions and accounting questions and all of that fun stuff.
Fred, unfortunate. Tracy, not unfortunate.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely going to be an interesting change of pace.
Well, I appreciate that. But there's Elizabeth working lunch Tuesdays at 11:30 Mountain Time.
There we go. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here. There they are. Okay, just like usual, everyone, the chat is always available for questions, but really, if you want to go ahead and use the questions and answers, we will do our best to answer those throughout the webinar here. And if we don't get to any, we'll reach out afterwards to make sure you get answers to those questions. Okay, so this month we are talking about invoice workflow. And if any of you have been around and joining us for a while, you remember we actually covered this last year. But Fred and I felt, well, there's enough that's changed in the product, and it's a pretty fundamental part of Lean Law. We might as well do it again, just to catch everybody up. And of course, there's new tricks and things to show off as well. There we go. And we actually just started using these slides to give you guys a better idea of what we'll be covering. That way, there's a little bit more. It's the same things that we discussed or showed off with the email and all the different correspondence there. But just for your personal note-taking reasons, things to look forward to there. So, Tracy, should we go ahead and get started?
Let's get started.
Okay. I'm going to turn off that screen share, and we start taking a look at invoicing here.
Chase, Donna wanted to know if the slides were available, but I think the slides are just basically the first topic list, isn't it? There's not like a slide. Right?
I mean, I could send Donna, if you really want, I could send you that presentation. It's really just the cover slide and that second slide with the topics. I'll sign it too if you'd like, but there's not much going on there. Go ahead and screen share that. There we go. Tracy should be able to see that now, right?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. So just to kick things off real quick, we're going to be focusing on the billing page in Lean Law and really the invoice workflow. So that's going to be ready to bill, drafts, approved for those of you familiar with that, and then QuickBooks. We'll be going through the process of creating invoices, editing invoices, delivering invoices, and just about everything in between. All right. So who all is familiar with the ready to bill page here? I'm pretending I'm in front of a live audience where I'm hearing all of you say yes, because that's the most fundamental part of what we do with invoicing. Yay. Now, most of you are probably already familiar with both ways to create invoices, but I'll go ahead and cover those for anybody who might be a little bit new. I'm new and shaky. I appreciate the candor there, Donna. We'll do both of those for you. So the first and probably the most direct is the step-by-step method. And you do that just by clicking on and going through the invoicing process step by step. So I'll go ahead and click on the matter here, civil matter. And we're now able to go through that step-by-step process of building an invoice. We'll pick the types of items that are shown, whether that's billables, non-billables, expenses, fees, and we're able to check these boxes here to include or not include those in our invoice. See if I can grab one here with a little bit more material. There we go. Great. So here's one. Got a whole lot going on here. And we are tweaking this right now, so it might look a little bit different, but the gist is the same. You're able to go through and specifically pick which types of items you do and don't want. Once you're done, you click Create Draft Invoice, and you're done. Now, that's great if you're a 1 or 2 person boutique firm, if you have a really small invoice load, if you really need to make sure for your 5 clients, they have very specific needs. It makes sense to do that, right? But for most firms, you're not doing just 5 invoices a month. You're cranking out 5 a minute. Billing comes and your day is just making invoices, reviewing them. And so we want to really focus on making those invoices in bulk. And that's really going to be the focus of the conversation here. And really what Lean Law is focusing on moving forward is making sure you're able to do as much as possible. So you spend as little time having to go in and do that. So how do we bulk create invoices? Well, very similar process. You'll notice we've got checkboxes here, eerily similar. We'll focus again on Costa Motors here just because we were working with them before. And you'll see the little checkboxes here, those columns. So that gives us the ability, just like before, to enable or disable specific types of entries from appearing on our invoices. So if we don't want to build or show any non-billable time entries, we can disable that checkbox here. And now for all the invoices we create here, none will show non-billable time. Inverse is true if we turn it on. Now you're able to do that matter by matter or line by line. So say for Coastal Motors, I don't want any of the non-billables to go out, but for everyone else I do. Can uncheck those. And now when I go to create these using the handy checkboxes on the left-hand side there, these invoices will now create without those non-billables. So again, value here of using that quick create is you're able to create lots at the same time. And I should mention real quick, the date that's going to be used is determined by the time period you have set. So by default, it's going to show all time. You want to capture all your time, right? Well, let's say it's September and I want to look at August's time or only bill August. I'm a little behind actually looking at the time. I'm very behind on monthly billing for August. But let's say I wanted to do that. I could set that time period here to August or August and earlier, really, if I wanted to capture everything. But now this is only showing me entries created in August. And when I create these, it's going to date them as the end of August. Tracy, how's that sound so far?
That sounds great. Maybe we can talk for a second about what's not on this list and ready to bill, and that would be contingency or the only with non-billable.
Good to point that out. So many of you may not be familiar, but Lean Law does have the ability to handle contingent firms, contingent and matters that are just non-billable. Now, if you're not familiar with contingent, basically the idea is you do a whole bunch of work over months or years, and then at the end of the period when the case settles, you create your invoice. Now, if you accidentally create an invoice for a contingent matter before it's resolved, you're going to have a bad time. And so what we've done is we've added a filter here on the left for show only contingent matters, because by default, contingent matters don't appear on the list here to prevent that accident from happening. So like Tracy was saying, we've got these two options here, show only contingent matter. Again, pretty straightforward there, only shows our contingent matters. And then only with non-billable. So if we wanted to look at matters, say that are pro bono, or we only have non-billables for, this allows us to do that, because by default, those don't show up because normally you wouldn't want to create invoices for those. There we go. Okay, now I did mention it. I didn't finish explaining it. Creating in bulk on this page, we click the checkbox here or however many we'd like. Boom, 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 and then click create draft invoices. And then that goes through the whole process of patching up our entries, our fees, expenses, and turning them into a draft invoice. Now, some of you might currently use that step-by-step method and go through and edit those drafts or those invoices, making changes to descriptions or values of time entries. But really, that's a pretty slow process right now. And so we want to try and shift doing it in that step-by-step method to really focusing on using the drafts tab, which we'll talk about in a minute, for all of your editing and reviewing needs. So let's take a look at that. Jump over to drafts here. Okay. So we've still got that time period there for August. Fantastic. Now, what's so special about draft invoices page? Well, we have this idea that whether it's the in-house bookkeeper or the person generating the invoice is able to go in at the end of the month or during the billing period, create all your invoices, and then ship them off to drafts. And from here, whether it's that individual making changes or it's the attorneys going in and making their changes, they're able to do that here. So let's take a look at what editing an invoice actually looks like. So we'll go ahead and open up this one here for Coastal. A whole lot going on here. So we've got the memo, we've got billing information, all the different items, all the way down. My goodness, this is a large invoice. It's even got the administrative fees down there at the bottom. But we want to talk specifically about editing our items here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this time entry here from Heather, preparing estate tax returns. Go ahead and click on it. Let's say I want to change the rate on that. Currently, that shows a rate of 0. That's because it's contingency. Wow, I picked the example there. Let's pick this one instead. There we go. Well, this is fixed fee detail, but that will work. Let's say I want to go ahead and change the description here. I can go ahead and click on one of those entries, and I now have an entire time entry here that I can make changes to. So if I need to fill in blanks, if I need to correct typos, if I need to change the rate, I can do that here. Even change the user. Now, those of you that have been watching these for a while might remember we talked a while ago about write downs, and that's actually built in here. So we do get a lot of questions in support. Hey, Chase, I need to write down my time, or I need to adjust the value of these time entries on my invoices. How do I do that? Because I don't want to change the actual amount that was tracked. I just want to change the amount that's billed to the client. This is where we do that with write downs. So here in this example, there is a 2.5 hour time entry, and I want to write that down. So I can, let's just do 1 hour right down there. So now on reporting, it's going to show that Donna Paulson worked 2.5 hours, but we only billed 1.5 hours. And Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the one place we're able to do this, correct?
Yes, because the only other way to change the amount would be to add a credit, and that's completely different. That wouldn't be able to still track the productivity hours.
That's correct. Now, great segue there, bringing up credits. I'll go ahead and cancel out here. There's definitely a big conversation to be had about credits versus write downs versus discounts versus discounting specific items. Discounts, the word discounts the entire invoice, like a percentage, are handled in QuickBooks. That's a whole nother conversation. But in Lean Law, we have the ability to add credits. So discounting a whole amount. Down here at the bottom of the invoice, we have this green add credit button, which adds a line item, a negative value line item to the invoice for the amount we'd like to credit that. Now, this is separate from applying a credit that exists in QuickBooks. That's very different. This is like wanting to, for a lump sum, discount the entire invoice.
Yeah, and you can change what you write in the description. It doesn't have to say credit. A lot of times it'll be like professional discount or, courtesy discount, things like that. And this will appear on the invoice, whatever you put in the description box.
That's correct. Yeah. So if I go, Tracy is the best, and we'll do $100 there. There is now a line item.
If I'm the best, it's like 1,000. Come on.
We're not seriously impacting the value of the invoice here. I just come on.
Okay.
But you now see that section here for adjustments and that single adjustment that we made with that negative line item. Got a couple of questions here. Lee asks, is there a way on the invoice for a fixed fee to only show the time entry descriptions and not the hours? Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the only way to do that is with the form styling in QuickBooks.
That's correct. You'd have to adjust your template in QuickBooks and take out the amounts, the value. You'd still leave the quantity of the hours.
That would not be just fixed fees, Lee. That would be everything. You basically just remove that entire column. Currently, we don't have the ability to, whether by type of item or in that level of detail, we're not able to do that. So, and that would be all invoices, unless you manually go in and change the form style that's used for a specific invoice. It's a very manual process. But basically, no, the answer is no.
Yeah, some people will create a separate template for certain cases like that. And so if they're going to maybe just do all of their fixed fee invoices at once and none of them are going to have those columns other than the quantity, they would just before billing go into QuickBooks and make that the default template. And then before they do their regular bills, switch back to the standard.
So Mark has a question here. What's the easiest way to switch time entry to a different matter or client if it's misentered? Currently, I believe the easiest way is actually to undo the invoice, undo the draft invoice, go to the time entries or calendar page and reassign it there.
Yep.
And Ian asks, will the credit affect the timekeeper's revenue report? As in, if they billed out $1,000, but the credit for $1,000, would it show the timekeeper's revenue as 0? I don't know the answer to that one, actually.
I think on the WIP billed and collected report, it actually reflects the adjustments. So you'd have the total billed and then you'd have an adjustment column that shows that. So it's kind of a yes and no answer. It'll show the total, plus it'll show the adjustments. But as far as the actual revenue, that's going to be based on what was paid. So the payment amount would be net of whatever the adjustment was, if that makes sense.
Real quick, I'm just checking to make sure. Tracy, you said the WIP build collected report?
Yeah, it might be the compensation report. They changed a couple things around. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there's also the unallocated down at the bottom there. Okay, let's jump back to our draft invoices there. So we're working on this one. Here we go. Okay. So we're talking about editing here. There is also the option to remove. There was that question earlier about reassigning. If you get to the draft point and you realize, hey, this is a time entry I don't want on this invoice, and you don't want to entirely undo that invoice, you could instead go in and remove that single item and select the save this time entry for later. That would then take it back to the ready to bill stage where you could reassign it to a different client or matter. But there's also the option here to delete permanently, you regular delete, and then adjust the time entry to 0 if you still want to keep that worked time, but not actually bill any of it. There we go. Now you will notice there is the little plus here. We're able to add time entries from the draft view. So if we realize late into editing a draft invoice we've been working on all day, we actually missed a time entry, we need to go in and add one, you're able to do that. And then, like we kind of talked about earlier, the ability to save a time entry for later, you can do that for entire sections. So if we realize, hey, all of the time entries for the fixed fee detail we don't want, we're able to click save section for later, and it gives us that same option, save for later. We'll go ahead and keep this section. Okay, there we go. Now you'll notice down at the bottom here, there's some information, and I definitely get questions about this. Hey, Chase, this is my invoice balance. Why am I getting different numbers here? Bit of a pro tip. Anytime you see this little QuickBooks icon, the little green thing, that means the number is being read directly from QuickBooks. So this client balance is actually the balance of this client in QuickBooks, all of their AR, right? Their payments, their invoices that are unpaid. That's what that number means. Again, trust balance here with the little QuickBooks icon, that's their current trust balance according to QuickBooks. The actual invoice total is down here on the far left, invoice total, and then again down at the bottom there. Got a question. If a time entry is revised in the draft format, but I later go and undo the draft, are those changes saved? Yes. Yes, they are. Okay. You're welcome. Go ahead and cancel out of here. Now, if we do need to undo an invoice, there was that option down at the bottom to undo. Maybe not. But there is also that option at the very bottom of the page. So again, we're talking about doing things in bulk here. There's that undo button for us. The same kind of checkboxes we saw earlier in Ready to Bill, we see here as well, where we're able to perform actions in bulk. And those options are down at the bottom for us, way at the bottom, where we've got a couple of options for us. One, the first option is to move them to the next step. If your firm is set up with the approved and reviewed options, you're able to push them to that. If you're direct to QuickBooks, it'll show that. You can actually skip directly to that, skip the approval process entirely if you prefer. Next to that, we've got undo. So if we realize, hey, these 8 invoices we actually, we don't want for this one client, we're able to undo those. Leads, oh, leads. Just as a quick insight there, leads is it's a type of billing. So instead of sending someone a PDF, you send a text file, and then a piece of software will read it and transcode it. It's its own thing. If you export the leads invoice here, it will show as being a draft instead of the final version. And so a lot of upload systems won't accept the invoice. Exporting leads here really is just for review purposes. Combined leads, what that does is instead of giving you multiple individual files, it just gives you a single file with all of the entries. So if you're doing a lot of work for the same client and you don't want to send or have to upload 8 different text files to the billing system, you can instead opt to combine leads, and that combines them all into one. So, and print just gives us the very nice PDF visual version of an invoice. Now, if we're printing multiple invoices, it should give us an overview at the top of which ones we've selected, which in this case, there's 3. I'm going to pick 3 different ones there. There we go. And again, this is for review purposes. There we go. So at the top, we've got that overview of the ones we're looking at, and then it actually gives us those actual invoices there. Now, this is a test account, so this doesn't look fantastic, and this isn't what yours will look like, but okay. Down there at the bottom. Yes, most big companies prefer to use leads. I think most of the firms that we support that, we're dealing with leads, it is larger companies.
And a lot of clients that have insurance companies, a lot of law firms that have insurance companies for clients, most insurance companies require leads as well. So I explain it, it's kind of like medical billing and coding, but for the legal profession.
Yeah, that's almost exactly what it's like. So you set your billing codes on individual entries and then have to follow specific billing practices. All very complicated. Okay. The other thing is this page doesn't show all of our invoices. We've got a lot more than this, but we have 2 pages actually. If we want to make changes to all of these, say we wanted to print or approve all of these, we would want to click show all at the bottom here. And now we can scroll through all of our draft invoices and push those through to the approved step. There we go. Now, do keep in mind the filters on the left here, just like we see everywhere else in Lean Law, these still are in effect. So if you create an invoice and it doesn't seem like it's showing up, it's September, I created October's, or I created August's, and it's not showing up, make sure to check that time period filter to accommodate that, because sometimes the date on the invoice might be different than what you're expecting. So do set a bit of a wider window there just to look for those.
I wanted to mention one more thing too while we're still here. So a lot of some of the larger firms that have multiple attorneys, and some of them are still like to have their drafts or their pre-bills, printed. What people will tend to do is to sort by responsible attorney and then do them in batches. So they would just sort all of Chase's and print them out in one batch to give to Chase, and then the next person, and so on. So that prevents them from having 50 or 100 pre-bills to go through and then have to sit there and manually figure out who you're going to go deliver them to. That's just helpful to sort them on the front end.
Yeah, exactly. Again, following that idea of doing as much in bulk as possible, making those processes efficient. All right, so that's drafts. Let's take a look at approved real quick. Just the one for me. There we go. Open one of these up. So approved, what are we doing here? Well, there are firms that operate where there's that review process on drafts, right? Whether it's the attorney going through and reviewing and making changes, whether it's paralegals or bookkeepers. Once that gets the stamp of approval, they're sent to approved. And then from approved, you're able to send it to QuickBooks, right? We're not making changes in this step. You're able to click on them and look at them and review and spectate them. But this really isn't meant for making those changes. That's really something that you would want to send it back to draft for, down here at the bottom, back to draft. Leads, again, if we're exporting leads on this page, it won't say final, so a lot of the billing systems won't accept it. Tracy, why do you like the approved invoices tab?
I like it because there are firms who have some tech-savvy attorneys who like to go into the draft folder, sort by themselves as responsible attorneys, and go in and make changes and do whatever they're going to do to their drafts. Mm-hmm. Then they send them to approved. What will happen if you didn't have that approved folder there? Whoever's doing the billing won't really know when they've been looked at or when they've been edited. So this just gives an additional step so that once they're in that approved folder, the billing person says, okay, I know that somebody's looked at it, made changes or not, and sent them to approved. So now they're good to go and can be processed.
Fantastic. Yeah, that the whole making sure you know what step the invoice is on, who's touched it, and what the next step is. Ian's got a question for us about sales tax and lien law. And actually, Ian, I'm going to reroute you. That is a fantastic question, but it's really more of a product development question. Ian wants to know about adding sales tax on individual invoices, which currently you do have to do in QuickBooks. I would suggest actually, whether now or once we're done here, popping onto the support chat and going through and requesting a feature that way. Ask for Chris. Chris is the guy you're looking for there. He'll be able to help you go through a couple of questions and then ultimately submit that to engineering for us. Okay. Doesn't look like we've got any more questions on approved, so I'm going to jump to the QuickBooks step, which is the big one. Okay.
This is the best one. This means you're that much closer to getting paid. So I look at it.
Lisa's got a question. How do you add a credit card fee to the invoice? I believe that's done. I mean, if you're using QuickBooks, QuickBooks handles that automatically. Lean Law doesn't do any kind of payment processing itself. And so your payment processing platform would handle that. As far as adding it to the invoice, unless you're using the QuickBooks system, I believe you just have to manually add that, right, Tracy?
Well, if you know, if you already know what your percentage is, 2.9%, and you want to calculate that on the front end, you can add that. You can add that as a soft cost, and it'll just go into your billable expense income. But you could add that through Lean Law so that it's on the invoice. If you're 100% sure that that's how the person is going to pay, and you know what your percentage is that you're going to be charged by the processing company, then you can add it before you create your invoice. It would just go in as an expense. Does that make sense, Chase?
I mean, that's completely over my head, but I'm also not an accountant. sounds fantastic to me. We'll have to see if Lisa. It looks like we've got the approval from Lisa. Great. Okay. So before we jump in to the QuickBooks tab here, I want to talk about the filters up top. This was added. Oh goodness, everything feels like it was added so recently, but it could have been 6 months ago. These are super helpful. I'll start from right to left here, but they're an extra level of filters. Leads, for those that use it, we've got an option to show with or without leads. So let me take a step back here. We're talking about big picture, improving efficiencies, not having to go step by step. What do these filters up top do? They allow us to specifically filter by different properties or characteristics of an invoice, whether it has leads, whether it has trust, the delivery method, the status, like has it been paid or not? That's what these allow us to do. So when someone asks, hey, Chase, I want to see a list of all my unpaid invoices, you could sort by, not paid and everything else, or you could set that state to not paid, which is what it is by default, actually. And then you're able to print off this report or go through and do what you need to. That's state. State gives us the option to check out not paid, overdue, and paid invoices. Little bit of another pro tip here. You see these little X's everywhere in dropdowns. We've got them over here in the time period filters. By clicking that, you clear and it shows all. So as if the filter was not applied at all. That's really important to keep in mind. Next up is delivery. So the preferred delivery method, or has it been delivered at all? Do we want to send it out via email? Do we want to print it? Has it been sent? Has it not been sent? Trust gives us with and without trust. Does the invoice have an associated trust account, or does it explicitly not? Or do we not care? And then leads, with leads, without leads. Okay, got some questions here from Aaron. Can an attorney that's worked on the file and is not the responsible originating review draft invoices and specifically their time entries electronically? That's going to depend on the user permissions the firm has set up. You can have it set that way, or you can opt to not have it set that way. That's going to depend on I think it's the billing section of user permissions. You'll want to go in and check that out. And that is a pro-only feature, Aaron. So I'm not familiar with what level your firm has, but you will need the pro level to control that. Lee actually has a question for Tracy. Who typically handles the processing from each tab in the billing process? You said in some organizations, the attorney will review and approve from the drafts tab, but who and when usually sends them from ready to bill to drafts?
Excuse me. So that's just basically an internal workflow that's developed within the firm. Generally, whoever's doing the final billing, as in sending to QuickBooks, they're usually the ones, unless it's a very large firm that has lots of separate people doing separate things. But typically the billing person will say, okay, it's the end of the month. She'll send email, she or he will send emails around, making sure everybody has their time in and so forth. Everybody will say yes, whether they do or not. And she'll move everything for whatever time period they're working in to drafts. At that point, the attorneys can go into the drafts, check themselves as responsible attorney, review them, edit them, move them to approved. So usually whoever's doing the billing is usually the one that initiates it from ready to bill into drafts, and then the final step from approved to QuickBooks. They're also usually the one who, if then they get an email from an attorney saying, hey, I just reviewed this and I've got like 5 hours more time to add and I don't want to do it from here, or I've entered time since the draft was created. Usually whoever's doing the billing likes to also kind of be in control of sending those drafts back to ready to bill. And that, again, workflow is set up within the firm, kind of who does what part. So sorry, that wasn't like a very definitive answer, but.
We need the textbook elevator pitch on how to answer that question. Jackie's got a question about entering expenses. I'm going to cut to the chase there, Jackie. Best practice is to track those types of expenses in QuickBooks, and then they will sync into Lean Law. That way you don't have to enter them in Lean Law and then enter them in QuickBooks again. If you enter them in QuickBooks correctly with the expense sync setup, they automatically sync into Lean Law and are then included in invoices automatically. And when that invoice is paid, the accounting for those expenses is handled automatically as well. So you don't have to double enter. That's actually exactly why we made that expense sync. Okay, let's talk about the QuickBooks tab here. Like Tracy said, one step closer to getting paid. What's the next step to getting paid? Delivering the expenses. So let's talk about how we do that. So we talked about the delivery option up top here. We'll go ahead and set that to not paid. And we'll select a bunch of these. Now, we could do it step by step. We could send one-offs, triple dots here on the right-hand side. And there's an option here to deliver. And I think I'm putting my foot in my mouth by saying that because they're actually, nope, there's email. Okay. I think that there is not an option for printing.
Right. That's what we were talking about yesterday.
Yep, you warned me about that. To print, you do have to scroll down to the bottom and click that print option. But we're doing one-offs, we're doing it that way, but that's not what we want to focus on. We want to focus on multiple at once. Now, let's say we select a whole bunch of these. Delivery is ready to email. Do we have any? We don't. Look at that. Firm is running at maximum efficiency. Excuse me. Well, let's pretend that these haven't been emailed. We'll go through and select those. And then at the bottom, we can select deliver. Now, if we click deliver, Lean Law is going to pick the default that's set for the matter. You'll notice on the right-hand column, or one of the right-hand columns, there's the delivery column. Now, if we hadn't sent these, they would not be green, but it would show email or print, whether it's set up to be emailed or printed. If we just click the delivery button at the bottom, Lean Law is going to pick the default method you have set and deliver it that way. You don't have to select all the prints and then select all the emails. You just click deliver and it automatically handles it. If you're emailing, that's being sent through the QuickBooks email system. And if you're printing, you got to lick some stamps. Uncheck those. Now you might ask, how do we set that delivery method? By default, Lean Law is going to use the default delivery method you have set in QuickBooks, but you can set it on specific matters. So if we want, let's pick here, yes, my favorite shellfish. We can set them to have a different delivery method. So our default, it seems, is email. If I want to change that to print, I can do that on this specific matter, click print. And now when I click that delivery option, Lean Law is going to know, hey, this is an email, this is printed. So you're able to do that for all of your matters. The default is in QuickBooks under, I believe it's account and settings, and then under sales. So where are you setting the default delivery service for each matter? I should have read that before I said that. Like I said, the default is set in QuickBooks. If you want to change it per matter, you go in like we just did here on matters. There we go, the QuickBooks tab, and then we can change that. And I apologize, I actually don't have QuickBooks set up to show this, but it is under account settings in QuickBooks, and then it's under sales, I think. Tracy and I looked at that yesterday.
Yep.
Okay. Fantastic. So that's delivery. So we've sent out all of our invoices. Let's talk about trust for a second. If trust is one of those things, we can get paid before having to send the invoice off, but the firm's process and expectations may vary. Some firms prefer to deliver to the client first, get approval, and then pay. Others prefer to pay and then show the work that they did. If we are paying first, actually, I mean, it's largely the same process both ways. We would select with trust here. So if we're paying ourselves first, we would select the appropriate invoices there and click pay from trust. That would give us the dialog to pay. You'll also notice the attached trust statement. What that does is it sends the trust statement from QuickBooks. So a statement of the different transactions, the comings and goings from the trust account. It attaches that either as an attachment for the email, or I believe that actually will print it out in addition to the regular invoice.
It will not.
It will not. It won't. All right. Forgive me, I have sinned. It does not print out that statement.
It will hopefully soon, but at the moment it does not. It'll look like it's attached, but if you print the invoice, there's actually no trust statement. You have to literally go into the trust section and print it separately. Mm-hmm. If you're emailing it, though, it automatically comes attached.
We've got a question from Jan. Is there a way to list the clients alphabetically? Almost in every section of Lean Law, you're able to click column headers and it will alphabetize that list for you. Now, you're going to say something, Tracy?
Did you hear me?
Oh,
Unless-
it sounded like you were going to say something.
I was.
Oh.
One just note with that is that the clients are usually listed with their client IDs. So if you have a client ID, it's not going to be alphabetized by the client name. It's going to go numerically by the ID number.
Okay, good to keep in mind there.
Mhm.
Another question, if the attorneys are the ones putting in the expenses, how does this get recorded since they do not go into QuickBooks? That's more of a process question, actually, at that point. If the attorneys don't have access to QuickBooks, then either someone with QuickBooks access would need to enter them, whether you're submitting them to that person or there's that process. Otherwise, I believe they just have to enter them in Lean Law, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And then and depending how their expenses are set up, it's going to go in as billable income, which probably isn't right if it was actually an advanced client cost. So that's an internal workflow thing. But it's kind of important because it makes a difference if they're putting in reimbursable costs and it's going to end up on their P&L as billable expense income. You probably don't want that to happen. So that might be an internal discussion.
Yeah, Jackie's got a question. Is there a difference from printing the invoice from Lean Law QuickBooks tab or going into QuickBooks and printing out invoices there? It is the exact same invoice. Lean Law is using the custom form styles you have set in QuickBooks to generate that invoice. And really, it's just QuickBooks generating the invoice using the QuickBooks settings. Lean Law just has the ability to kind of shortcut that, so you don't have to jump into QuickBooks, do it, and then jump back. Got another question here. Is there a way to balance a trust account without having an open invoice, or a workaround to balance if it is not balanced in Lean Law? I don't understand that question. Do you mind rephrasing that, Katrina? We'll wait for that. I do want to mention real quick in regards to delivery, we have the ability to automatically CC or BCC on invoices that we're emailing. So if we jump to our settings here up top, and then go to the QuickBooks option under integrations, down here at the bottom, we have the ability to automatically CC or BCC emails that go on invoices. So if the partner wants to see every invoice that goes out, you can add them here. If the accounting partner wants to be BCC'd on everything, you can do that here. Kind of similar to that, you can actually set it so that the same thing happens, but only when the user is set as the responsible attorney. I'll go ahead and open myself up here. There's an option here to CC on responsible invoices. So anytime there's an invoice that goes out that I'm responsible for, I would automatically be CC'd on that. Be CC'd, not be CC'd. Okay, jump back to billing there. So we covered trust accounting there real briefly, delivery of those invoices. Ooh, question from Eileen, I'm easily distracted. Is there an easy way to change the client's name on a matter? We have a lot of movement with matters needing a new client name. Tracy? I guess I should ask, Eileen, are you asking about having a matter reassigned to a different client or simply changing the name of the client? Because if you're just changing the name, you would pop into the clients or matters details, add the new value there. And like, so if you want them reassigned, like if we have Chase client and Tracy client, and we have matter yellow notebook for Tracy, and you want that switched to Chase, that's a reassign. And at the moment, that's something our support team has to do. So if you reach out and let us know the client and matter that is currently assigned and what you want it switched to, they can take care of that for you. So I do know that's something that we got a lot of. Yep, it's a reassign. I know that's something we get a lot of questions about, and something I've continued to bother Fred about. It's not great for either party involved, and so I would love several. It's something I would love to see added as a feature, but it's one of those things where, you know, he's been humming and hawing over it, so we'll see about getting that added. Okay. Tracy, did I miss anything here that you just cannot end today without mentioning on the QuickBooks tab?
I think just one of the things as far as sorting it by trust, when you have trust payments, just as far as not necessarily best practice, but what a lot of firms do is what they'll do is they'll just to make it easier and more efficient, they'll sort everything with trust. They'll go through and they'll take all of those payments from trust, and then they'll actually be able to print the paid invoices that show as paid to send to the clients. We've just had a lot of people mention that that's just so much easier to just do those separately and upfront so that they don't get lost in the shuffle. And then they can then just go and process the rest of their invoices that get, emailed and printed. And do you want to talk about bulk payments? Were you talking about payments at all? No.
We briefly touched on trust payments. Do you want to talk about bulk payments?
Yeah, let's talk about bulk payments.
Let's. And real quick, Jen has a question. How do I prepare a fixed fee invoice? It's the exact same way you prepare a regular invoice. There's no difference unless it's contingency. All right, Tracy, bulk payments, what do you got?
Just the fact, because we have some clients who, going back to like the insurance companies, for example, who might have 5 or 6 different invoices in their unpaid section, but get one check from the insurance company to pay all of those different invoices. So do you want to show like how you can choose multiple invoices to make that one payment?
I mean, you mean just by clicking a couple of these checkboxes and then scrolling to the bottom and clicking record payment?
Yep.
It's that easy?
It's that easy.
Well, they do have to be part of the same client.
The same client, right? Right.
So let me go back and change that real quick.
But they don't have to be paid one by one.
Correct. There we go. Record payment.
Well,
I'm going to pretend like I selected the right clients there.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Okay.
But yes.
In theory, you don't have to record them one by one. You can choose everything that's on that particular.
There we go. Hey, it's like if I use the filters we built in, the system works like it's supposed to. Go figure.
Right.
So that's what Tracy's talking about. Select them all from the same client, click pay, record payment. There you go. You track the one check that you get from the insurance company. You don't have to go in and try and break it up multiple ways later. Right. Can you edit the invoice in Lean Law after it has been sent to QuickBooks? No. What you have to do is open up the invoice. Let's grab one here that is not paid. So clicking on the invoice, like I just did, I'm not going to do anything. That opens the invoice. What you have to do is bring the invoice back to Lean Law. So there's an option here with the triple dots, back to draft. That pulls it out of QuickBooks, moves it back into Lean Law. That's what you should do. Oh my goodness, so many questions. Kathy's got a question. Is there a way to add interest option automatically to an invoice to start tolling after 15 days of unpaid, or would you manually have to add that? Tracy, I defer to you on that one.
Can you repeat? For some reason, I'm looking at the questions, like I'm lagging like about 4 questions behind as they're coming up. So could you repeat that?
Yeah, so the question is basically how to add interest to unpaid invoices. So after 15 days, how do you start tracking? I imagine like a late fee.
Yeah, that's a setting in QuickBooks under sales. You can set that up to assign late fees, and it'll give you some time filters and how much and percentage or a fixed fee, that type of thing. But that's a QuickBooks setting.
Okay. Looks like we got some clarification here from Katrina, and I apologize if I messed that up. Let's see here. Client has paid from their trust account, but on Lean Law, it still reflects the whole amount for their trust account. How can I bring the trust amount to the correct amount in Lean Law? That's the kind of question we get in support on the day-to-day. It's going to depend on, I assume you're talking about showing that on invoices. Client has paid from their trust account, but in Lean Law, it still reflects the whole amount for their trust account. So you've sent them an invoice, you have paid, I assume, paid the invoice with the trust funds. When you record payment, or when you record payment in Lean Law, the trust account is going to update with that payment. If it's not, something's going on and we need to have a support conversation. But you'll notice the memo of that invoice that you're paying with trust should have that information shown, the trust balance before, the trust balance after, how much is being taken out. If you're seeing otherwise, hit us up on support and we'll be able to explain why you're seeing what you're seeing, because it should be showing the correct number after you pay. So also, sorry, Tracy, don't confuse the account balance and the trust account balance. Those are two totally separate values. I'll pull it up real quick. Tracy, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say too, that the trust account memo on the invoice is going to show that payment, but unless you actually record the payment from trust from that invoice in the QuickBooks tab, it's not going to move that money out of that client's trust account. So it'll look on the invoice as if it was paid. However, until you actually generate that, click the button, record from trust, the money's not going to really move on the ledger.
Okay. There was previously an option for you to record trust and could manually edit, but it seems like it can only happen now in the invoice. Are you talking about recording a trust payment when there's no invoice in Lean Law? That's what that sounds like. Can the client? Yes, you are. Yeah. We had a conversation about that and actually removed that. So actually, what I'm looking at here, imagine if there was no invoice, the button is grayed out. I cannot click record payment. We made the decision to not allow for a trust payment to be made when there wasn't an invoice. That was causing a lot of confusion about the order payments goes in, making payments for invoices that are somewhere else. It was just causing a lot of issues. And so we decided to remove that. So Kathy asks, can the client bulk pay or only from the company backend? I am going to guess you're talking about using like a different payment platform like the Intuit Payment Network. I don't know actually if they can pay multiple invoices at once that way. That would be a question for QuickBooks. Yeah, recording payment in QuickBooks. I don't know. Tracy, do you happen to know the answer to that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the payment button is just attached to the invoice. So if somebody received 5 invoices in one day, they would have to click 5 separate times, and so it'd be 5 separate payments.
Yeah. Okay. Last question here from Maria. Is there a way to show the matter name in full on the invoice once it's in QuickBooks? Yes, that's going to be using, I believe there's one of 2 ways to do that. One is the custom field method. Go take a look at that real quick. Go to Invoice Presentation and map custom fields. That's a whole nother conversation, Maria. You picked a big one there. And actually this one is not set up to do it because I believe you need QuickBooks Advanced. The other
you can do it with Plus.
Okay.
But it has to be set up in QuickBooks first before you can do it in Lean Law.
Okay. Maria, I would ask that question in chat. I know we have a fantastic article written by Doug on how to handle those. We used to be able to do it here, but I think because we added custom fields, that's no longer an option. You can add the matter as part of the billing address. That's an option here. But the last thing, normally at the end of the conversation here, I would flip the time over to Fred and Fred would show us the new features. Fred, it's not here, but there is a new feature that many of you might not be familiar with yet. We added short codes, like little cheats or shortcuts for making time entries, so that I actually have no idea what the short codes are on this one. They're related to snippets, right? So we had snippets before. Snippets allow you to pick from, oh my goodness, that is a huge snippet. You're doing a lot of the same work over and over and over again, or the attorneys are rather, and you don't want to have to type out the same 5 words every time, call with client, research, whatever it is. So you've got snippets to go in and add those. Well, now we have added shortcodes. So basically text shortcuts to your snippets. You're able to check those out here under team settings. And then you're able to go in and add the shortcodes to your different snippets. So if I go and add that, so actually I'll add one, hello, and I put HH as the shortcode. Now when I type HH into a time entry here, it will automatically fill in hello. There we go. So again, HH space. Oh my goodness.
You won't do it the second time.
It won't? Oh my gosh. Nope. And I thought I was so cool over here. We'll do that again. Close out HH space. All right.
I hate when a magic trick doesn't work.
I ask you to pick a card and none of them are your cards. We'll get back to that one. Point being, you're now able to quickly use a shorthand to pull in lots of those different snippets. So we're happy to see that. Fred did have more to cover, but he's not here. So you'll have to tune in next month for more of that goodness, which, by the way, next month we're covering reports. I'm sure all of you have seen and have mixed feelings about this new reports UI. That's what we're going to be covering next week, or next month, rather. We've added reports, we moved reports, we've renamed reports. Write down all of your feedback, the things you like, the things you don't like, the things that are frustrating, or the things you just get plain lost trying to find. Bring that next month, because we're going to be talking about the new reports UI, comparing it to the old one, finding those reports you know and love on the new system, and maybe some ones you didn't know we had added that might be super useful. So Tracy, thank you for joining me on such short notice. You were a fantastic co-host. I look forward to secretly inviting you to more of these.
Oh, that would be awesome. I had fun.
And if we didn't get to any of your questions, please feel free to use the support chat on the site. Let them know that you had a question that didn't get answered, and we will get back to you. Actually, real quick, I will just grab a screenshot of all of these and just go through and answer them personally. I'll just go through and answer those afterwards and reach out with any of those questions. So, and of course, a recording for this webinar will go out within the next week once we get that uploaded. So thank you all for joining. We will catch you next month for reports. Tracy.
Bye, Chase.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.